We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. Did you get Infinity War? Did you watch it?
I did, and I have watched it 2.5 times so far.
There you go.
I loved that movie.
Okay.
I loved it more than I could have ever hoped to have loved that movie. I thought there was no way I was going to love the movie as much as I loved it, but I totally did.
Well, it definitely had a Tom ending, so.
Oh, yeah. Well, I knew that wasn't this coming. Okay, that was sort of spoiled for me, I guess.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to not know something about that. But
there were so many things that were not spoiled for me that I was able to go in there and just be like surprised by and like amazed at and everything. I was very, very happy with my ability to stay away from spoilers, and very happy that how much I enjoyed the movie. So it was fantastic. You know what? And there were some slow parts, and the slow parts were mostly when they were developing the bad guy, which you're like, finally.
Right.
If you're going to have a bad guy, give him some screen time.
Yes, he got the most character development by far, because everyone else is like, they got their movies, so that's their character development, and we're not going to waste any time on that. It's all going to be Thanos development.
Yeah, and it was fantastic. I loved it. So, really good. You know, I thought the pacing was great. I thought every character got a little bit in there, and just enough, and nobody seemed like they were really overwhelming the whole thing. There was lots of nods to the comic books that you may or may not know, and you didn't have to know to enjoy the movies.
Right.
There was enough callbacks to the other movies, but not so many that, like Age of Ultron, it was like if you hadn't seen the other movies, you were out of luck. It was real hard. So I have seen it. And I watched it with my two older boys one night when it was too late, and I probably shouldn't have let them watch it, but I wanted to watch it, and that's just being a parent.
And it is 2.5 hours long, so
it is very long. Yeah, and then I told my wife we were going to watch it, just she and I, with her holding the pause button, so she could pause it and say, "No, what the heck are they talking about?" And I'll say, "Remember this movie when this happened? This happened? Oh, right, yeah, okay," and then go. So it's going to be a 4.5 hour ordeal, probably going through that thing, but. It was good, you know, and I thought, I cannot remember the name of the Thanos' like henchman, but they have it, an order of something.
Well, the main one would be Ebony Maw.
Yeah, but they're all called something together. And I don't remember what it is, but
I don't
remember. But they were all real good too. They were a little bit generic, not quite enough given to them, and you know, I thought they could have been handled a little bit better, but overall, real good.
All right.
Loved it.
Well, I watched it with my parents.
Oh.
And so my dad enjoyed it. My mom really did not like it. It was not her cup of tea. She falls asleep in any movie where there's lots of action, like lots of fighting.
Oh, wow.
And she doesn't really know all these characters, so she wasn't super into it. Wasn't her cup of tea, but that's okay. Not everybody has to love it. And I mean, again, my thing was I was mostly impressed by just the fact that they managed to like pull it off, like that many characters, and have it be not entirely incomprehensible, which could have been the case easily in lesser hands of directors.
Yeah, the Guardians of the Galaxy are one of my favorite series of movies, and they, when they came in, I just was giddy. So I thought that everything that they did was awesome. Everything that happened with them was amazing,
and it was fun seeing them with Thor. And I just wanted to mention on the viewing experience side of things. So my parents have a 55-inch LG OLED, and sitting a bit farther away because like a regular sized living room, and we're sitting on a couch across from there. And that did lessen the experience a bit. This is a movie you want to see as big as possible. It honestly is better when it's like the. Does anybody care about spoilers? This isn't even really a spoiler at all.
I know. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Let's be spoiler free still.
Oh yeah,
if I made it far,
this really isn't a spoiler. Which is just that Doctor Strange has his cloak, which is kind of like alive, kind of has a character of its own. And the cloak kind of goes off on its own and gets hurt at one point, and like that was much easier to see on a gigantic screen,
right.
whereas on the smaller screen from farther away, you didn't really notice the cloak get hurt, and that kind of missed that moment. So yeah, see it big.
All right, we're going to talk more about, because my day has been something. I'll too long didn't read it. Yeah. My son needs more exercise in his life, my 15-year-old son.
Okay.
So I decided, to my infinite wisdom, that because I know a guy who does CrossFit and is real fit and trains all the time and stuff like that, I asked him, and he's like, yeah, come into the gym. We've got this entry-level class, and you can do it for free for once.
Cool.
I'm like, okay. So I was like, I'll do it with you. We'll do it together. Yeah. I am not going to be able to walk tomorrow, I don't think. My son stuck it out almost all the way to the end. Uh-huh. I did not even get close, but it was I invite all of those people who are in CrossFit to come to the climbing gym with me, and I can show you that I am actually able to do something physical. Like all the push-ups and all the lifting things, I had no problems with any of that, but as soon as it was anything cardio, I immediately started seeing SAR. So I am going to be unwilling to sit in this chair for 2 hours, Rob, is what I'm trying to say. So we'll see how far
we got to see what we can do. We started late, so let's
I know. All right, this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask us by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You go to www.avrant.com. Leave us a comment there if you can. You might not be able to. Whatever. We got the question line. Facebook.com/avrant podcast. YouTube.com/avrant. Contact us directly. Rob at avrant.com. His Twitter is at @FirstReflect. I am Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter is at avrant_Tom. I don't think anybody uses Twitter anymore. I don't think it's a thing.
It's certainly died down.
I don't think we need to list that as one of the things people can contact.
I get a lot of people contacting me on Twitter. So
okay, well I will still keep doing it. I know nobody contacts me. Yeah, that's fine. Whatever. All right. We want to thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, you have to support the podcast in some way. One person who has supported the podcast in an amazing way is James. James is somehow involved with a company that provides promotional or sells promotional materials to companies. So like if you're like, oh, we want to have a pen with our logo on it, James's company would be the one that would do that. So James asked me about my new company, which is the Fearless Mobile Climbing.
Right.
And he sent me a box full of notepads, with like plastic covers where you could slip in a business card or something like that, and then the logo was on it, and I was like, these are really cool. And I opened up, in the first page it has rocks on the first page. I'm like, rocks, that's pretty cool, rock climbing, Fearless Mobile Climbing, it makes sense. But then I flipped the little rock page over, and I'm reading it, and the paper is not made of pulp, it's made of rocks.
Cool.
All the paper inside the notebooks are made of rocks. I was like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And the paper feels a little bit different. It writes just fine, but it feels a little different. And it's, according to this sheet of paper, which I guess I'm believing, it's more eco-friendly and creates less CO2 and blah, blah reasons. But it's made of rock. So I was very, very happy with that. So I want to thank James very much for his contribution to not necessarily the podcast, but my life. And since I run this bad boy, that counts.
Certainly thank to one of the hosts of the podcast. Yeah, thank you, James. That is excellent. That's very cool.
We also want to thank our 67 patrons over at patreon.com. Patreon.com is a service where you can sign up, and it'll take a monthly amount out of your account and give most of it to us, I think. And that's sort of like a subscription. It's like subscribing to the podcast, but they run it, and Patreon seems to be so far on the up and up, except for that one time when they tried to completely hose everybody over. But they came to their senses.
They backed off on that. Yep, that's good.
So we want to thank our 67 patrons.
Yeah, that is patreon.com/AVRant podcast. If you'd like to sign up, the minimum is $1 a month, and quite a few people have done that. So thank you very much to our 67 patrons.
That's right. And if you want to support the podcast, you can't financially, feel free to do something. What? I don't care. Tell a manufacturer that you bought something because of us. Get a tattoo. Don't get a tattoo. Our logo is pretty cool, but I don't know if it's tattoo worthy. Every time I see somebody get a tattoo of something they like, I'm like, you're not always going to like that.
That 600 logo would be quite a tattoo if you get the fireworks involved.
That's right. That's going to be, you're going to be under the knife or the pen or the needle. for a while. So if you can do something like that, let us know and we will list you. But for this week, James, it's all you, buddy.
All right.
You the listener of the month-ish. Yeah, whatever. All right, in the news, we're going to get right into this because this is long and I never read it before the podcast, so this will be a first reading. We'll see. Gaming companies, console manufacturers, and TV manufacturers all got together to form the HDR Gaming Interest Group, HGIG. HIG.
That is not an acronym. It could be an initialism. It's an initialism, but not an acronym.
Their goal is to create best practice recommendations so that HDR gaming experiences are more consistent regardless of which HDR display is being used. At the moment, many games are just using the full 10,000 nit range, which is then being tone mapped differently by different displays, leading to frequent complaints about HDR games looking too dim or clipping highlight detail. User error. It's a volunteer group, but Microsoft and Sony's game divisions are both on board. LG, Samsung, Sony Electronics, Vizio, and other TV manufacturers are all on board. Well, if Microsoft and Sony are on board, you got to be on board. I'm sorry. they make both the gaming consoles. You know?
They do both the HDR gaming consoles, to be sure. Yep.
Yeah, so, you got to be on it. And lots of big name companies like EA, Activision, Ubisoft are signed on, but they're just trying to put loot boxes in them somehow. Where do we put the loot box?
Thankfully, they're backing off on the loot box thing. They got slapped on the wrist a little bit over that
I
stuff.
don't know about that. We'll see. The loot box. They still love them
on
boxes.
mobile gaming, you're certainly still getting the loot boxes, yeah.
The preliminary best practices document calls for three groups: the display manufacturers, the game developers, and the console makers to work together.
Each of them's got to do something, so it's got to be a
the display manufacturer needs to provide metadata for. The display manufacturers need to provide metadata for their game mode. The game developers need to provide graphics within primary and extended HDR ranges, and console manufacturers need to provide a calibration app and tone mapping according to a database of metadata information. The goal is to keep critical details visible no matter which HDR display is being used or what kind of ambient light is present. That sounds like a really good idea.
It's really good idea. It's a challenge. The way they're coming at it, it makes sense. I'm worried about having a calibration app that gives the users any control whatsoever, because that opens up the possibilities.
Don't be Apple. Give us the control. Don't be Apple.
It was kind of funny because reading through it, so this is not like ratified or anything yet, but this is like the prelim, and they're like, okay, display manufacturers, if you don't want to provide exact numbers for some reason, and there must be some reason they wouldn't, they're like, they have defined 4 categories of like, basically this is how bright our TV can get. Both full screen and in a 10% window. So if you don't want to give us exact numbers, just whichever category that we've predefined is closest, make that your metadata, and then we'll tone map to that. So it's interesting.
God forbid that they give out the real numbers, because then people will be like, that's not what you said in your marketing
I'm
material.
guessing it's Samsung, because Samsung doesn't want to work with Dolby because they don't want to give Dolby access to any of their stuff. So I'm guessing that's who it is. But yeah, it's kind of interesting that the way they're going to come at this is to have the game console do the tone mapping and then output a signal that, according to the metadata sent from the television should be able to just display without itself having to tone map the signal. That's the idea behind it. And the reason they're doing it that way is because they say, let's say you have a small, bright object, but then you're playing a game, so it gets bigger and bigger. You need to know how bright it's supposed to be when it's filling up only 10% or less of the screen versus more than 10% of the screen. And you need to be able to tone map that on the fly, which the game console can do easier than the television can. So that's why they're doing it that way. It'd be interesting. I'm hoping it'll work out. HDR gaming should be a thing.
Yeah, we'll see. Comments from listeners here. Andrew has a suggestion regarding the Amazon Prime lip sync issues we've been discussing recently. He says that he was having a similar problem using his Apple TV 4K, but then he tried deactivating the automatic frame rate switching. With his Apple TV 4K and his display both locked in at 60 Hz, the lip sync issue seemed to be fixed. I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if that's possible.
You turn off your 24 Hz support.
Yeah.
Turn that off, and then your player will only be sending 60 Hz all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I did notice that, let's see, from my actual Windows PC onto some of my televisions, I would get pretty bad stuttering, not in the audio, but in the video, if I tried to send it 24, or what the Windows PC defines as 23 frames per second, which is actually the 23.976, which it never gets quite right. Always rounds up or down a little bit, and that's why you get the stutters. So locking my Windows PC at 60 hertz often provided the smoothest video playback, even though you get the judder from the 3.2 pull down going on. But yeah, I don't know. I'd be just as willing to believe that the next thing you play on Amazon Prime has a problem again. I'd be willing to believe that from video to video it changes.
I'll be willing to try it. I'll try it,
sure.
And then I don't know that I'll try it anytime soon because I'll forget. Because
definitely can't hurt.
But I will try it next time I want to watch iRobot guy thing.
Mr. Robot.
That's the one.
It would be.
All right, Kris. Kris got some info from Apple Insider working with a pre-release firmware for the... an Apple Insider. Okay, so it's a person. It sounded like it was a magazine. Working with the pre-release firmware for the Apple TV 4K so far, 0 titles on iTunes are outputting Atmos audio, but that just means Apple hasn't updated any of the iTunes library yet. Also, no Atmos for Netflix, although again, it just means no app update yet. But the surprising one is streaming Apple Music. Sending the Apple TV 4K with its pre-release firmware into its Atmos audio output setting resulted in the receiver going to Atmos listening mode and outputting sound from all connected speakers, even though Apple Music is obviously only a 2-channel stereo. So internally, Dolby surround upmixing and Atmos flag seems to be the case. And unfortunately, supports our theory that the Apple TV 4K might be continuing to decode all audio internally and then re-encode it for output, as opposed to a true direct from the source bitstream output. Dude, I would bet dollars like 20 that it's like all channel stereo. That's what
right. Yeah.
I don't think it's up mixing. I think it's just all right, everything on this side of the room gets this, everything on that side of the room gets the other thing.
You set this to Atmos. What's that? You want 11 speakers to make sound? Okay, 11 speakers making sound.
How do you feel about those crappy speakers that AVRant told you would be just fine for Atmos trying to pull out a full range signal? How do you feel about that?
But yeah, clearly Apple Music is not encoded in Atmos at the source. That is definitely not the case. So if it's putting your receiver into Atmos mode, then they are definitely re-encoding it inside of the player. Totally not shocked if that's what Apple's going to end up doing. That's like we mentioned. That's how Xbox One handles its Atmos. It's doing it all poorly inside of itself. So probably.
Carlton on Twitter informed us that there's no way to control the Dayton 6-source
that there is a way.
Oh, that there is there's a way. Oh, see, why did we apostrophe it?
Where'd the no come from? That's definitely not in there. There's no N or O anywhere around.
I did CrossFit today, Rob.
I know.
What did you do? I almost died.
CrossFit made you cross-eyed, huh? Is that what's going on?
Oh my god. I was like, I don't think I could. I was giving it the good college try.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I ran the first 400 and did all the push-ups, and I ran the second 400 and did those push-ups, and then I started on the rowing machine. I got halfway to 400 meters and said, I think I'm going to throw up all over myself, so I think I should take a break.
Well, I've been breathing smoke for a week because all of British Columbia is on fire.
That's true. You guys are.
The one thing was it was supposed to be 31 degrees today, and it was cooler than that because the sun is blocked out by all the smoke. So
you're welcome, Rob. You're welcome.
That's our cloud cover. Is lovely, lovely smoke.
That's 31 Celsius for all of us Americans.
Well, I'm not going to specify that. You believe what you want to believe.
Carlton on Twitter informed us that there is a way to control the Dayton 6-source 6-zone whole house audio system using an app. Monoprice actually sells the exact same matrix amplifier, just with different keypads. And there's an app for Android and iOS. Just search the respective app stores for Monoprice Whole Home Audio. The app works for both Dayton and the Monoprice systems and costs about $6. Do you need an Ethernet or Wi-Fi to serial port adapter? And the instructions for the app specifically say, you do need an Ethernet. I need to read these things beforehand. You do need an Ethernet or Wi-Fi to serial port adapter, and the instructions for the app specifically say to use the iTAC, I don't know what that is, iTAC Flex from Global Cache.
I think they actually pronounce it cache because they put the little accent over the E on their own name.
There's no accent on this one. Yeah,
I know. Cache. I didn't type it, but I'm pretty sure it's cache.
Those, I guess, they cost about $100. Mm-hmm. But even with the added costs of the iTac Flex and the app is still less expensive than any other system, especially since the Monoprice version often goes on sale. So there's that.
Yeah, so I was very thankful to Carlton. I didn't know there was a way to get app control. I like that Dayton system very much. The Monoprice one it's the same darn amplifier at a lower price. So as long as you like their keypads, and actually the Monoprice keypads have one slightly nice like do-it-yourself installation feature, which is that either of the keypads you're just running an Ethernet cable to it. But on the back of the Dayton one that I'm showing in the images, if you're watching the YouTube version, this is the Dayton keypad. On the back of that one, you actually have to strip the Ethernet cable and get you need 6 wires inside of it.
Oh, right. You got to do it yourself.
Yeah, you got the little Phoenix connector and put it in there. Whereas on the back of the Monoprice, they just have the regular Ethernet jack. Oh. So easier to plug in.
That thing's pretty easy to do. It is pretty easy to do, but I've done it, and I'm an idiot when it comes to electricity. So,
given that the Monoprice is less expensive and the amp itself is identical, it's a nice little convenience feature. But if you already have the Dayton, then the amps are the same, so you can use the exact same app. Somebody made one for both Android and iOS, the Monoprice Whole Home audio app, but it'll work for the Dayton as well. So that's great to know. And you'll need that little iTac Flex device from Global Caching.
I think about the like everything we love about Monoprice. I can only imagine their app. What does that? I mean, we love about Monoprice. Well,
it doesn't seem like it was made by Monoprice. Somebody else made the app apparently. Well, it's not their name on it.
Giving me any more confidence about it. But okay. All right. Somebody has to do a review on that for us. Let's get into this. Tom, not me, some other dude. Tom has KEF R500 speakers and a Golden Ear Force Field 5 subwoofer. He runs them as a 2.1 setup using his Onkyo TX-NR787 receiver, which is an old enough model that it still had Audyssey Multi-EQ XT32. Probably doesn't have the sub-EQ part.
The 929? I'm pretty sure that one did, because that was the upgrade from the 818 the year previous, and the 818 didn't have sub-EQ HD. Okay. But the 929 got it, I believe. Yeah.
Anyways, he loves the sound, but he's read so many glowing reviews of the Parasound Halo preamps that he's considering getting one of their integrated amps to power his speakers instead. 90% of the time he's listening to music in stereo, but he does occasionally use the setup for a TV or a movie, and one of the features of the Parasound Halo integrated amp is that they offer a home theater bypass input. They've had that for quite some time. So he could feed the pre-outs of his Onkyo into the Parasound's home theater bypass and still have his home theater stuff connected, to the Onkyo. Yeah. So then you just it sort of like sits in between the Onkyo and the amps essentially, and then the Onkyo can use it, right? Is that
Well, it is an amp. So
that's right.
It basically just, the home theater bypass pretty much just turns the Parasound integrated amp into a dumb amplifier. It just turns it into an amplifier.
I've always wondered about that. Does it lock it into the reference volume, or do you have to set a
that
reference?
I'm not sure about. I haven't used it personally, so I'm not sure if it locks the volume somewhere.
I think at one point I knew the answer to that question, because I did a little bit of research into these guys a bajillion years ago, and this has been around for quite some time. So he asked, do we think the Parasound Halo integrated amp would be a worthwhile investment? Would it upgrade his sound quality?
Nope.
not even a little bit.
Oh dear. I mean, I'm sure somebody's going to hear a difference and knock us for saying
no, I'd be okay. If you hear a difference, it's definitely coming from between your ears. But and that's fine.
There's the other very legitimate way it could be making a difference, which is the idea is that whatever source you're listening to as just 2-channel stereo,
right,
you would be plugging that source directly into the Parasound. It wouldn't touch the Onkyo at all. It would that source, like let's say it's your vinyl record player, and you're only ever going to play that in stereo. You would plug that straight into the Parasound Halo. Now, the Parasound Halo integrated amp does actually have bass management. You can connect a subwoofer to it, so that's nice. But it doesn't have any kind of room correction. So if you heard a difference between plugging your phono vinyl player into your Onkyo that is running Audyssey Multi-EQ XT32, and then you plugged it into this Parasound and you heard a difference, I would go, well, that makes sense. One of them was applying Audyssey EQ and the other one wasn't. So that could certainly be a legitimate difference in sound.
The difference would be negative, but that would be my expectation. Yeah, that it would not be as linear as all that great, Audyssey is doing to the other thing. But fine, I'm sure you've read many glowing reviews because
there are, yes.
Just try to find one that's not a glowing review.
Pretty sure he was reading What Hi-Fi out of the UK. Because this exact model, boy, oh boy, were they over the moon about this thing.
And I'm sure it's fantastic. I mean, I'm sure it's got all the top components and the gold-plated.
I very much like that it has bass management. You don't see that on a ton of stereo integrated amps, so that I give a big thumbs up to. Yeah. But this is not something I would encourage you to spend your money on.
It's thousands of dollars.
It's thousands of dollars.
I didn't even look it up, and I know it's thousands.
Yeah, it's not where. I mean, if you haven't treated your room, I would treat your room. If you don't have 2 subwoofers, I would definitely get 2 subwoofers
Even
before.
If you're mostly listening in 2-channel, 2 subwoofers is still worth it. So he asks, how would having the Parasound in his setup affect his Onkyo's Audyssey settings? It shouldn't. It shouldn't.
Not when the Parasound is in home theater bypass. No, I mean, you would want to run Audyssey again because you now have a different amplifier powering your front, left, right speakers, and it might have different gain than the Onkyo has itself.
Right.
Potentially. I mean, it's a very... I'm not worried about Parasound having a non-linear amplifier. They have nice linear amplifiers.
Oh, yeah.
So on that front, but you would want to run Audyssey again just so that your trim levels are set correctly, essentially.
Right. This is a customer that... A Parasound is made for a customer that is not interested in room correction. Right. They're interested in a lot of other things, and none of them are room correction. Right. You know, their idea of room correction is putting a clock. And if you need to do some research on that, it's called the Clever Little Clock.
Well,
look it up.
What Hi-Fi was talking about how impressed they were that it still had treble and bass tone controls. Woo! Because that has been taken out of a lot of integrated amps, apparently. I'm not up on the latest integrated amps. It's not something that interests me tremendously, but they were like, oh, it has tone controls. I'm like, really? Really, What Hi-Fi? In 2018, you're going to be talking about treble and bass tone controls, are we?
Yeah, I remember those when I was 10. You know, back when there was it may have even been before the Cold War. Yes, we had.
I'm like, you know what else has tone controls? The Onkyo 929. It also has treble and bass controls, as well as a full manual EQ, as well as Audyssey. So yeah.
He asked, could we describe the pros and cons of using that home theater bypass input? Well, I mean, other than the fact that it is a very expensive home theater bypass input to buy, if the way it works is once you set it into the bypass mode, it immediately changes its volume to a specific volume, whatever that volume is, and it always does that, then I see no con to doing it.
Yeah, essentially you just have a 2-channel amplifier at that point, which is great.
Which is fine. Which is fine. Fantastic. But the pros are exactly the same as the cons. They are non-existent. There's no pro to using it. The pro,
I suppose if you know, the 929 has 9 amps built in. I'm pretty sure that has 9 amplifiers built into it. Sure. And let's say you had connected 9. It doesn't sound like he's connected 9 speakers to it. It sounds like he's connected 2. In which case, the 929 has like legitimately excellent amplifiers in it. Right. You know, like, especially for a mass market AV receiver, but just bar none, has very good amplifiers. And especially if you're only using 2 of them, really nothing to be gained in terms of an external amplifier for that.
What did he say speakers were? It said they were what?
He says it's a 2 point. Yeah,
they're KEFs.
And they're KEFs, so they're not hard. I mean, they're not super easy to drive, but they're definitely not hard to drive. And you only mentioned having 1 sub. No, there's really not a pro to be had to this.
And
but
you know
the home theater bypass, I like that it's there, because what that means is you have your 1 pair of front speakers and you don't have to physically disconnect them from anything. They're always plugged into the Parasound, and when it's time to watch an HDMI source that you could not plug directly into the Parasound, you don't have to physically rearrange anything. You just put the Parasound into home theater mode, and now it's just an amplifier. So that's good if the main thing you wanted was this stereo integrated amp specifically for some of your stereo sources that for whatever reason you really don't want Audyssey applied to, and you're not willing to just turn it off in the 929 when you want to listen to them without EQ for some reason.
It sounds like a really expensive solution to that problem.
It certainly does. A couple of button presses versus several $1,000s. No, I can't recommend that you do this. Spend your money on a second subwoofer way before you do this.
Yeah, and I want you to understand, I mean, it's very easy to fall down this rabbit hole. We're going to get to a question later on, which I think is we're going to come back to this. Once you start reading something, it's like I bought a new car for this business that I'm doing, and it's a Toyota 4Runner, right? And I knew they existed before, but sure. I never really noticed them. Well, now that I bought one, they're everywhere, and that's sort of what happens to. I literally parked right next to one tonight. My son tried to get into the wrong car. I mean, there was that many of them. There's black. It's got the silver runners on the top. They all look exactly the same, no matter what year it is. It's ridiculous.
Well, it's even more legitimate on the internet, because if you've ever searched for anything, you are definitely going to see that thing pop up all around the internet far more often now that you searched for it once.
Yeah, so. That's true. But I mean, once you start reading these things, it's very easy to fall into the trap, if you will, that of reading it and you get this sort of confirmation bias. The more that I've read it, or more I've heard these things, the more true it must be. But the reality is, all the people who are buying this thing, and they are legitimately enjoying it. I don't want to say they are not.
If I were building a 2-channel system and I had one of these, it's not like I'd be going, oh, I feel like I'm really missing out on something. No, it's a good piece of equipment.
Yeah. It's just, where we're coming from is trying to get the best reproduction of sound.
Yeah.
And the best reproduction
value for your dollar.
And value for your dollar. The best reproduction of sound can be had much, much less expensive and more effectively by room correction. Now, if you really want this thing and you have, I would even go so far as to say, professionally had your room treated, so that you've had somebody come in there and just measure everything, then knock yourself out. Now, you've already spent, tens of thousands of dollars getting your room sorted out.
Right.
Well, then sure, you don't need Audyssey at that point. I mean, I'd still have it if it were me, but that's something
he probably only cares about the one seat when he's listening to 2-channel stereo. So maybe the 2 subwoofers don't make as large a difference,
I don't know, man.
I still want 2 subs no matter what.
In my single seat in any theater I've been in, as soon as you put those 2 properly placed subwoofers, my experience is better.
Oh yes, I agree. But I'm just saying,
real good with one.
Maybe the arguments can be made.
Seat. Yeah. My point here is that we're not dissing the Parasound or insulting your wanting to have it. I understand where you're coming from, and I'm reassuring you that you already have great equipment, and you don't need this thing to make it sound better. What you need is room treatments. Maybe a second sub would certainly be our first recommendations. I seem to be losing my voice. Michael is in Australia, and he's trying to decide which SVS subwoofer or pair of subwoofers to buy. He says his room is approximately 2,200 square feet, but would you imagine he means cubic feet? Because if not, then holy crap,
that is
a
big room if it's 2,200 square feet. Yeah,
maybe it's only 1 inch tall. It's just really long and flat, as far as you can see.
Quite certain he meant cubic feet.
Okay, he's considering dual PB-1000s. Would they be suitable for his room size, or would we be better off buying one PB-2000 for now and then eventually getting a second PB-2000 later after you saved up some more money? 2,200 square feet. I feel like the PB-1000s would be fine in there.
Oh, 2,200 cubic feet. They absolutely would.
Yeah. Could he go with the sealed? I feel like he could go with the sealed with 2,200.
I mean, SVS, being honest, claims -3 at 23 hertz. So why not get the PB-1000s and go right down to 19?
Well, I hear you. I'm just thinking about floor space here.
Sure.
No,
but I mean, a pair of PB-1000s in 2,200 cubic feet, absolutely fine. No reason in terms of output or extension that you need to upgrade to the PB-2000s in 2,200 cubic feet. Not at all.
No, I don't. So I agree.
The pair of PB-1000s all the way in this one, Michael.
Yeah. Shawn has RBH R55 Ti tower speakers. That's the first generation from the Impression series. But then he had their tweeters replaced, and the new tweeters are from the second generation of the Impression series speakers. Okay, I feel like this is going to get complicated. All right, everybody, take notes. Now he wants a center speaker, but he says he cannot get the matching center, so he's asking for recommendations for a center speaker under $500. That will match really well with his RBH towers. He considered the new RBH Impression Series R515 center, but he was concerned that it's much smaller than the first generation center and only a 2-way design instead of a 3-way design. What do we recommend? I recommend you get the RBH Impression Series R515. That's what I recommend. I 100% recommend that.
Yeah, yes. Absolutely. So, I mean, first of all, it's now sharing the exact same tweeter as your towers that have been updated to have the new tweeter. So, in terms of timbre matching the most critical parts of the human voice that are going to be in the upper registers, having the exact same tweeter is nice. It's a good idea. Yep. It doesn't guarantee anything because you are dealing with placement and one being horizontal and the others being vertical, but it's a good starting point to have the exact same tweeter across all three front speakers. Now, I get the concern of I have these large three-way towers, right? And at one point, RBH had a large three-way center to match them. And so, of course, logically you go, oh, of course those would match, but now the new R515 is smaller and it's two-way. So, what is the concern there with going from three-way to two-way? Well, the bass drivers are called such because they're mostly handling bass. And if you consider that you're going to set your center speaker to small and you're going to give it a crossover so that now your subwoofers are handling the deep bass, now you have a three-way center. It just happens to be that the bass drivers are in separate cabinets in other areas of your room. But it is a three-way speaker at that point. You have created a crossover from the two-way center to the subwoofers and set the center speaker too small. So it's not trying to reproduce that super deep bass. So if you think of it that way, you're still getting that. In terms of output for the treble, obviously that's going to be very similar with the exact same tweeter. And output for the mid-range and upper mid-bass, that's not going to be an issue. You're still dealing with two mid-woofers in the tower, and you're dealing with two mid-woofers in the center. So you're just offloading the bass duties to your subwoofers by setting that center to small, and you don't have to worry that it's a two-way versus a three-way.
But I think what's really being said here is that he is concerned that the center speaker is in some way going to be inferior to his other speakers.
Or versus the old one, which yes, admittedly was much physically larger.
But again, the physically larger center channel isn't necessary depending on your situation. Now, are you finding yourself in the room that you're in, you're sitting so far away that you're having to crank these things way up and you're still having intelligibility issues or whatever with whatever center you're using now, or with the speakers themselves? If that's the case, well then perhaps you have some concerns that might be valid. But the reality is RBH knows what they're doing. All right, they built the first center, they built the second center, and they know that there's going to be people who are going to want to match the second center with the first series speakers and vice versa. Not only that, I have said on this podcast a bajillion times that you can almost take any RBH speaker and match it with any other RBH speaker. They all play nice together. In fact, not only that, RBH plays nice with just about everybody else because they are extremely linear, they are extremely flat, and they are extremely accurate. So all you need to worry about from that center channel is whether or not it will get loud enough at your locale where you're sitting. Now, are you sitting 23 to 20 million feet away from this thing? Because if you're somewhere closer than 23 to 20 million feet away, then you're going to be just fine. Okay? So, yeah, that's I have no problems recommending that. Now, we can come up with, and I'll be honest with you, any speaker that a company or any speaker in particular that we have mentioned in the past as being a good speaker, a good linear speaker, pretty much you could grab their center. If that's the one you want, knock yourselves out. I don't think you'll have a problem with them matching. Now, will they be a perfect match? No. Would there be a noticeable difference between the two? I have matched RBH centers with many different tower speakers, and the only time it's been a problem is when the tower speakers were non-linear. Right. You're not going to have non-linear towers, so as long as your center that you buy is a fairly linear center, I think you would be fine. Yeah. That being said, buy the RBH.
Oh, yeah. Plus, it's on sale right now, so it's actually like the best price. Like, some alternatives could be, say, Aperion's Intimus 5C, or SVS's Prime Center, or Ascend's CMT 340 SE Center. All of these are nice linear speakers that would absolutely play very happily next to some RBH Impression Series towers. But all of them right now are more expensive than that RBH Center, so get the RBH.
I think we're just reassuring people today. We're just a pat on the back, guys.
I don't mind that.
Yeah. Kris, again on Twitter, which apparently is still a thing. Just nobody tweets me, which is fine. Don't start.
When you never respond to anyone, they go,
That's not true.
Maybe I'll write someone else.
I respond. Okay. Okay. The new Android operating system, Pi, I think is what it's called, came out, and it allows me to turn off notifications. And I think I turned off Twitter, so I may have to fix that. I have to figure out how to fix that. Sorry about that, guys. All right, Kris on Twitter again. What's with the new Dolby Audio logo and their section on their website? Is it an entirely new Dolby format? I looked at this, and it seems to me that I am. Wait, I tried to click it, and now it's doing something. Nope, that was bad. No. Did I lose my... No, okay, good. I still have my place. All right, so I clicked on this thing, and it just sort of seemed to me that this was like a, we are Dolby, and these are all the things that we do. Yeah. And we do audio. It doesn't really seem to be a new audio format as it is. No, it's
definitely not that.
Put it all together and say, we do all these audio things because we're Dolby and we have audio.
Yeah, it's mostly a branding effort.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at that section on their website and see all the things that it describes, other than dialogue enhancement, everything else they're describing is what used to be called Dolby Volume. Right? The automatic volume leveling, the enhancing the sound when you're playing it back at lower than reference volume, the sort of equalizing of surround channels to the front channels. All of that used to be Dolby Volume, and they're now just rolling it under this Dolby Audio thing. And they've rolled out these sort of 5 logos now, where everything is going to be under these 5 different banners of Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos, Dolby Cinema, Dolby Audio, and Dolby Voice. And Dolby Voice is mostly their, what would you call it? Online communication efforts. It's like for things like Skype. It's
okay.
Kind of a weird thing. It's not really to do with like movie playback in any way. But they've sort of rolled everything under those 5 headings.
Yeah.
So all of what they call their Dolby Audio Technologies, which includes all of their surround sound formats, other than Atmos, right? So Dolby Digital, Dolby Digital Plus, Dolby True HD, those are all now rolled under Dolby Audio. So what they're trying to do is, maybe somebody complained that there's too many logos to put on the outside of receiver boxes these days, because what they're wanting receiver manufacturers to do is to just slap the Dolby Audio logo on there. But that doesn't mean it has Dolby Volume. It doesn't mean it has Dolby Dialogue Enhancement. It could mean that all it has is a Dolby Digital decoder, and it still qualifies for having the Dolby Audio logo, right? So
yeah, I appreciate the simplification efforts, but I think that it's going to end up probably not being successful.
Well, I mean, their whole idea behind this is if you have 2 products that both have the Dolby Audio logo, you'll get sound. Like that's all you know for sure, right? Your cable box has the Dolby Audio logo, and your television has the Dolby Audio logo. You put those things together, and you'll get sound. Why? Because they both use Dolby Digital, and that might be the only Dolby technology that they use. But you'll get sound. Or your Blu-ray player has the Dolby Audio logo on it, and it's sending out Dolby True HD, but you're sending it directly to a television that only has a Dolby Digital decoder in it, but you still get sound, and they are both Dolby Audio. So it's kind of these things will work together, and you'll get sound out of it. And their whole claim, of course, is that, our encoding is so good that, it's always going to sound good. It's going to be Dolby Audio. And so it's a marketing effort to try and just make the name Dolby Audio synonymous with this works and sounds good. It's not meant for enthusiasts like us who like to get into the nitty-gritty. So there's parts of it that we might not like because we're going to look at something that has the Dolby Audio logo on it, and we're not going to know which specific Dolby technologies it supports until we dig into a technical manual or something like that. So that's kind of a negative for us enthusiasts, but it's their effort to the public to simplify things.
He says, so let's suppose a streaming box manufacturer decides to implement all of the Dolby Audio Technologies. It seems impossible, but let's go on. What would result in the streaming box outputting a signal with dynamic range compression, dialogue normalization, enhancement, surround sound upmixing, and whatever optimization has been done to the audio signal? If you were to then feed that Dolby audio signal to an AV receiver that applies Audyssey processing, what happens to the signal? Will Audyssey dynamic EQ fight with Dolby Audio's dialogue enhancement? Will Audyssey's dynamic volume fight with Dolby Audio's automatic volume control? Yeah, dude, it's like Tron up in there, right? It's like the little programs. There's like the little Dolby Audio guys throwing discs at the little, the Audyssey guy, and they're just like, "Ah, I will destroy you. Let's go on the light cycles." Yeah. So what's going to end up happening, and Rob already kind of described this, is it's what happens right now. The two sources talk to each other, right? Now, whether or not you decide on the one end, like even with the streaming boxes, it's never automatic that all these dialogue normalization things happen. And even if it did, once Audyssey gets it, Audyssey's not doing, I mean, it can, but it's generally not doing the kind of things that you're talking about. What it's doing is analyzing it frequency by frequency and saying, okay, if you're at this frequency, we're going to apply these fur filters to it, and we're going to adjust it in this way. Now, if you do decide to turn on Audyssey, the volume is that's trying to level everything, and Dolby's already done it, well, then what's it going to do? It's not going to do anything, right?
I mean, this is I guess you could call it like a cascading amount of processing, because Audyssey is just going to take whatever signal is fed to it and do its processing to it. Right. If that signal it's being fed was already processed by Dolby, it's still going to do what Audyssey processing does to any signal that you feed to it. But yeah, if all the volume levels are already very even because Dolby volume has already been applied to the signal, then there's not a lot for Audyssey dynamic volume to do at that point. So it's still going to run through its algorithm, and maybe it levels it even a little bit more or something. But yeah, it's not a fighting so much as it is a cascading. I don't know.
I don't see that situation that he described ever really happening.
No, because it's probably not going to be coming from the source device.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, they certainly do talk about putting it in mobile devices, right? Because they're like, here's all the ways that we could enhance the headphone output, essentially.
When you plugged your headphone output into your AV receiver, you get what's coming to you, okay?
But still.
You don't get a complaint about Audyssey volume and Dolby volume fighting with each other. You're just like, dude, you just plugged your telephone into this thing. Yeah. Of course it's going to sound like garbage.
It does mean that it could get very difficult to pinpoint why things sound the way they sound.
Let's all blame HDMI. Let's get that.
I mean, there really could be a heck of a lot of processing going on, and trying to nail down exactly which variable is causing the thing you don't like. Yeah, this could become a headache for sure in their effort to simplify.
Sure. Rob would like to better understand how a single driver in a speaker can produce multiple frequencies simultaneously. He's just trying to wrap his head around it on a conceptual basis, so we can chat. Can we chat a bit about how speakers reproduce recorded sounds and how we are able to pick out multiple instruments all playing at the same time, even though it might just be one driver, as in the case of headphones, moving back and forth?
I love this question.
Oh, good, because I have often thought the same thing.
Oh, okay.
And I understand the idea. What's happening is very clear. What's on the recording is being transformed into electrical impulses that go, that are reproducing the waveform, if it will, of that was the sound in the air at the time. Because you got to think about it this way: you're asking this question of a speaker. Well, that sound came from the air, and it's not like the air had multiple. I mean, it's all the same air. It's all. If you think about it, it's coming at you in waves that are all around you. So if you're amazed by one tiny driver doing it, be amazed right now that the world around you is having different sounds, and it's all coming through one medium. which is the air. And that's essentially what's happening is we're taking that sound or that waveform, transforming it into something digital, transforming it back into something electrical, which is then amplified by the amplifier, which then moves the driver in the same fashion that the air was being moved at the time. So that's really what's happening. Now, how is that possible? Just magic.
Well, it's definitely not magic, but it is really cool and amazing. So the main thing, so let's focus. I'll try to break things down into little chunks. So the main thing I want to focus on is you are absolutely right. The driver, so let's just take one driver because that makes it easier. Let's imagine that it is a single driver that's producing all the sounds you're hearing. Easier to wrap your head around. It is just moving back and forth, okay? It's not doing we don't want it to do any other movements besides straight forward and straight backward. That's all we want that driver to do. So forward and back, that's the only motion. It might be able to move more, to make it louder, but only forward and back. That's it. So if we just picture a wave, we often picture just a sine wave.
Sure.
Right? So just a wave going up and down, and you can imagine you can make that 1-to-1. Up is the driver moving forward, down is the driver moving back. So that's fairly easy to picture. We picture this wave just going up and down. That translates exactly into the driver going forward and back. But waves have this really cool thing, which is that you can just add together different frequencies and different amplitudes and different phases. You just add them together, and where they overlap, you just add them up. You really just can add up individual sine waves, and when you do, they form a single, more complex wave. That's all that's going on here, is that two or more individual sine wave frequencies are overlapping, adding on top of each other, and you end up with a more complex wave as a result. But that more complex wave is still just some pattern of up and down, forward and back. That's all it is. It's just a more complex version now where things have been added together. So there's a thing called a Fourier transform. It's a mathematical algorithm that you can apply to any complex wave that will break it down into its component parts. And I love sometimes just thinking about how cool an equation really is. Just the concept of an equation. The things on the two sides of the equal sign are the same. They look very different. Right. The thing on the left looks very different from the thing on the right, but they are the exact same thing. So on the left of the Fourier transform is one complex looking wave, and on the right are a whole bunch of very simple looking sine waves that are just added together. But they are the exact same thing. How cool is that? So how can you have one driver, all it does is move back and forth, and yet somehow we're able to hear multiple instruments, and those instruments themselves are not producing just one sine wave each. They sound different because they're producing a fundamental, which is a simple sine wave, but then harmonics of that fundamental are coming out of that instrument, which are other higher frequencies that just get added to the fundamental and create a more complex wave. All of those complex waves of all of those instruments and voices all just sum together, and it is as simple as addition. We're not talking about anything more complicated than addition. You look at the two waves on the graph, you see their positions, and wherever they are superimposed, you just add those values together. And that's the new value that goes into the single, more complex looking wave at the end. But that more complex looking wave at the end is still just a pattern of ups and downs, still just a pattern of forward and back. And that's all it is. So it's that simple, but it's also that amazing in my mind at the same time that something that complex can be broken down into little parts that are as simple as sine waves just added together. So now that we understand what the wave is and we understand what that signal is, the signal is just changed into voltage, swings in voltage, positive, negative. And that, so think about, you've got your red wire and your black wire going to the two sides of the driver. Right? Now, when the voltage is positive, it says, okay, all the electrons are going to flow from the red side over to the black side. And when the voltage is negative, all the electrons are going to flow from the black side over to the red side. So it just goes back and forth, exactly like the wave, exactly like the driver. And all of those electrons are fed through a coiled up wire with a piece of metal inside of it, or a piece of metal around it. That's an electromagnet. And since the flow of the electrons is going from red to black, and then from black back to red, and then from red back to black, and black back to red, they flow through the coil in opposite directions. And that makes the electromagnet, which is the piece of metal inside or around the coil, move back and forth. And that pushes the driver back and forth in exactly the same way, in a way that is analogous, hence the word analog, to the waveform that we looked at, which is a series of ups and downs, gets translated into a series of backs and forths. It's really cool. That's why I love this question.
Yes. Magic, as I said.
That is not magic. It is like, it's translating waves into movement by moving electrons back and forth in an electromagnet. Cool
The
stuff.
way I've always kind of conceptualized this for me is that I don't have to really understand it.
But don't
and this
you
is
want
why.
to?
No, yes, and also no. But once I understood that the air that's coming out of my mouth right now and entering the sounds that's coming out of my mouth and going into the air, that air is vibrating back and forth, doing all the things it's supposed to be doing. Inside of this microphone in front of me here is a diaphragm that is reacting to that air and creating this complex waveform that you're talking about. Like, even though I don't understand what that might look like or exactly how to calculate it or any of that, I don't have to, because that is then being recorded in some way digitally by my computer, which I can understand. I can understand that. It goes back and forth. Every time it goes to back, it says, okay, well, click 1 on the 1 thing for the back thing. Oh, it's gone now. Click 0 now. All right, now it's on the front thing. Click 1 there. And then it goes back and forth, right? That, then, you're just telling the speaker to do the same thing the microphone was doing when my voice was speaking into it.
Well, yeah, I mean, a microphone is just a speaker in reverse.
That's exactly right.
You've got the air. So, think about at the speaker side, when the driver pushes out, it's literally just bumping into air molecules.
Yeah.
And those air molecules just bump into the air molecule next to them. And that wave, then that push of the driver just gets transmitted all the way down the series of air molecules. Yeah. So they're just bumping into each other. And then the driver moves back, which forms a little bit of low pressure. So the air molecules rush back the other direction to fill in that low pressure, and they all just get dragged along. So you can think of it like they're all just bumping into each other back and forth, back and forth. Now that back and forth movement of the air molecules hits your eardrum and moves your eardrum back and forth, and that's how we hear. Or it hits a teeny tiny little diaphragm inside of a microphone, and that teeny tiny little diaphragm moves back and forth. Well, now that there's this little diaphragm moving back and forth, we can attach it to an electrical coil with a piece of metal in the middle of it or around it. And now, instead of the electrical signal going forward and back and moving the piece of metal, now we are moving the piece of metal, causing the electrical current to flow back and forth. It's just the exact reverse. So,
which is, once I realized that's how microphones work, I was like, well, then, hey, if that's how microphones work, then of course speakers would work. Why wouldn't they work?
Speakers and microphones are the exact same technology, just reciprocal versions of each other. Also cool.
All right, let's go on, because this is getting pretty heady here. Patrick. The answer is still magic, by the way. Patrick wants a Bluetooth speaker that can fill a 40 by 40 foot classroom with decent but not crazy loud volume for under $250. What do we recommend? All right, so in the past, I have reviewed quite a few Bluetooth speakers, and a lot of them are pretty expensive. Like the one I've got right now is by Thiel. It's real expensive.
I would expect it to be from Thiel.
It's real pricey.
So not that one.
Not that one. Though that one gets stupid loud.
Okay.
I mean, it gets, but it's also humongous, right? It is real big. That being said, Creative has a line of Bluetooth speakers called the iRoar series. I think the iRoar 2 costs about $100, and that one is a fairly small speaker, probably about the size of a small book. Well, not a paperback, but a small. Somewhere between a paperback and a hardcover book, and like a George R. R. Martin one, though, but pretty thick. So that has a lot of sound output. 40 by 40 is awful big. They have another bigger version of that. It's not called I'll have to find it real quick.
Yeah, because the iRoar 2 is only about $100. But yeah, you're right. It's not certainly not checked out. Now he was like, it doesn't have to be crazy loud, just loud enough to hear it,
And this would certainly do that. I have no doubt that this would do that. So there is another version of it, and I'm going to try to find it. It's red, but it has a little bit, quite a bit more output. And I'll see if I can find it real quick.
Now, I know of one. It's a little bit older now, but you can still get it, and it's actually down to only $80, so can't complain too much about the price. It's by a company called G Project, and it is their G Boom. Fun name. Kind of looks like an old school boombox a little bit, but it's got a handle. It's kind of got rubberized feet, and they basically built it for tailgating. That's more or less what they built it for. Has a rechargeable battery in it, which is nice. Lasts about 6 hours in there, and gets kind of stupid loud, especially for the price tag. So I mean, can't complain about the price and the abilities of the thing. So yeah, I quite like that G Project G Boom. Does do Bluetooth.
So stupid. All right, so Creative, apparently the iRoar 2 is the smaller one, but the Creative iRoar is a newer version and is louder. But that one's more expensive. That's about $200.
But that's under the $250 he was looking at. So
yeah, I mean, I would take a look at all three of these, or at least two of them. You could get the iRoar 2 from Amazon for $100.
Yeah,
and that's pretty easy to return. And I'm sure that this G Project, whatever the heck it is.
Yeah, the G Boom is available at Amazon as well. So if it doesn't float your boat, you can return it to Amazon.
I didn't see the iRoar I was talking about, the newer. I think it's the newer one. I didn't see that one on Amazon. So check it out. Heath, why am I losing my voice, Rob?
I don't know. Are you getting sick?
I don't think so. Heath first wanted to mention an update regarding the 4 SVS subwoofer amplifier replacements he went through with his 4000 series subs. So far, so good with the most recent replacement amps, and the SVS has not had to replace the entire subwoofers, which is what they said they do if they have any more amps blue. So maybe it was just extremely bad luck, which definitely could be the case.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was just a bad batch of amps, which also could be the case.
Also could be, yeah.
He's still checking constantly, but so far, the latest amps have held up. So he asks, unrelated to that.
Yeah, that was just an update, but good to hear. First and foremost, I'm happy he has functioning subwoofers now, because that's the main thing. You got 4,000 series subs; those are nice and not inexpensive. So very happy that they're working properly for you now. But also, you have the confidence that if something does go wrong, SVS is going to stand behind it. So that is also nice to know. But Lord knows what the heck was going on. Since his neighbor had some PB16s also, I'm like, I swear your power company was like doing something funky.
I'll tell you what, my AC went out on Thursday of last week, and it was like at 3 o'clock, and you're not going to get anybody out that's not going to charge you $5 bajillion.
That's right.
So we called the guy we knew, but he's like, yeah, I'll be there tomorrow morning.
Sure.
Great. So he came over, and the unit outside, he goes out there, and he's like, here's your problem. He hands me a crispy fried dead lizard. It crawled behind like the circuit board and just shorted the whole thing out. There's scorch marks up the wall where it had burnt alive. So now my AC's out. I mean, it's out. He came and bypassed the board and he's fixed it, he said.
Right.
And I'm doing air quotes because it's not fixed. But what it is it's blowing cold air.
There's cold air blowing, right? Yeah.
But now it won't stop blowing cold air.
Right, yes. Yeah.
So he said that shouldn't happen with that board blowing. So I'm like, okay, but it's happening. So in order for us to have a cool house at night, I have to like time everything. So I left that. I had to flip the circuit breaker off so the AC was off all day until like 5 p.m. So right when we started this podcast, which was 9 p.m., it had cooled down to 80 degrees in this house, which is like tolerable. Before that, it was real uncomfortable in here. So now I have to time it so that after the podcast, I've timed it so that it'll be cool in this room during this podcast.
Yep.
And then afterwards, I'm going to turn it off for a couple of hours. And then before I go to bed, I'll flip it back on. But anyways, what does Eco Mode on his Marantz Receiver do? He's got external amplifiers. Who is this? I forgot.
It's Heath. Yeah.
He's got external amplifiers for all of his floor-level speakers, so the Marantz is only powering his Atmos speakers. Will Eco Mode versus non-Eco Mode make any audible difference? Okay, I don't know, but I will tell you, I never use Eco Mode. Right. It's not because I don't recycle. It's because every time I do, and I do recycle quite a bit, every time I do, I feel like performance is almost always choked off in some sort of really negative way. The only times I've ever found an eco mode to be helpful on any product has been on a projector that has been known to be
eco lamp mode.
Yeah, it's extremely bright, and then I'm like, yes, eco me, baby.
Yeah, you got to dim that lamp.
Yeah. So yeah, what's the answer, Rob?
Well, according to Gene over at Audioholics, who measured what the eco mode did. Now, it wasn't this specific AV receiver, but it was a Denon sister company, and it has the eco mode. And his advice was avoid it like the plague. So kind of iffy, not quite sure, but. Yeah, no. He's like it topped it out at 20 watts per channel, and you can go no higher, no matter what. That's it. You stop at 20 watts.
So that stinks.
It is a hard cutoff. Now there is in Heath's Marantz an auto eco mode, which means it stays in eco mode until you need more power, and then supposedly it flicks itself over.
What's the point of that? If it doesn't need to be in eco mode, then why would? I mean, if it's not asking for more power than that, then what's the eco mode doing?
I don't know. I get maybe it goes to a lower voltage rail on the power supply and therefore burns a little bit less idle energy. Maybe? I don't know. Don't quote me on that as being the case, but maybe it's something like that. I don't know. I wouldn't use it. There's not really much reason to use it. There's also never a reason to change your impedance setting from anything other than 8 ohms for your speakers. Again, so I would go by Gene's advice from Audioholics. I wouldn't use it. There.
All right. I'm just sending an email.
Of course you are.
It's somebody is making the claim that we will answer live questions via email during the podcast, and I was like, nope, we will not.
we have never done such a thing,
and we're not about to start now.
Nope, we're not a live Q&A. We need time to prep.
First in, first out. That's how we operate. Yeah. So he asks if he changes the eco mode setting, does he need to rerun Audyssey? Well, you're not going to change the eco mode setting, so don't. So you don't have to rerun Audyssey.
You shouldn't need to, because it is a setting you can just toggle on and off.
Yeah.
Now he did ask, will it help keep the heat down? Maybe. Again, I don't. Maybe if it's switching the power supply to a lower volt, but I don't know that it is.
Well, and even then, I think a lot of the heat that comes from the video processing, the other
video
circuits,
processing chip,
other circuits of video processing and stuff like that. So, just putting your amplifier into eco mode does not necessarily guarantee that there's not going to be any heat generated by, or even considerably less heat. Now, it could be if you're running your speakers really loud and there's you're watching a movie that's using every speaker in your system and you're powering them all through your receiver. But in that case, eco mode is going to shut you down anyway. So
I mean, like he said, he's only powering his Atmos speakers. They probably don't need more than 20 watts each. Is he
experiencing a lot of heat with this thing? Is that the problem? Is this?
He's just like, it's if it runs cooler, so much the better. It's never a bad thing for it to run cooler.
I guess so.
I mean, I guess you could give it a try. Just being your Atmos speakers, you're probably not even going to notice.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's not something I would bother with. I don't even want to think about it. I don't even want the possibility that something was supposed to be louder and it can't be because of eco mode. So I wouldn't bother with it.
Yeah. Nah. All right, Dre. And this is, if you're not watching the YouTube version, which is fine, I understand. But if you're not, I will do my best to explain this to you. But this room is very hard to describe.
This is a revisit, at least, though. So.
Yes. So Dre wrote us back to clarify what's going on with his unfinished townhouse basement. He understands that just trying to eyeball distances from the photos he sent led to some concerns and confusion. So here's the situation. If you remember, we said, dude, it looks like your room's going to be a closet because there's this thing hanging from the ceiling and there's water pipes everywhere.
Yep.
And it was completely unfinished. It was, there's like tarps on the walls or whatever those things are, just, vapor barrier or whatever that is. So anyways, he's going to help describe this to us. What is that pink thing hanging from the ceiling, dude? What is that?
What is that? I don't know.
What is that thing? I thought it was a fan, but it's not a fan.
No, it's just a paper thing. I've seen those before.
Yeah, it's like if you took like those fans that you fan yourself with and you opened it completely up and hung it from the ceiling. This room, that you think that brings the whole room together?
I guess it helps you know if air is blowing, maybe.
Maybe. Okay, I don't know what's going on with that, but that's just gonna I'm gonna have nightmares about that. All right, here we go. Like he says, the big box on the ceiling with ducts and hoses coming out of it is this heat recovery ventilator. I don't know what that is. The device with the blue pipe beside it is indeed his hot water tank. So Rob was right about that.
Yeah. So heat recovery ventilator, more common in cold climates. He is in, I think he said he was in the Toronto area, but he's up in Canada. So yeah, it brings in cool air or outside air, hence the ventilation part. But then it kind of uses the existing inside air to condition that air. So it's a little bit more efficient than just only bringing in outside air and conditioning that directly from whatever. It's using the air that already exists to help condition be a bit more efficient.
Yeah, we don't do that here in Florida. The gray draped material on the walls was just a temporary covering. It's concrete behind the gray material on the wall next to the windows. Okay, so if you look at the windows, to the left of the windows is this big heat ventilator thingy. On the right is the wall that has all the gray stuff on it.
That's
There's also a pipe on that wall. So we're going to get to this. He had 6 contractors come in, and have a look and offer some thoughts so far. He's talked to general contractors, basement specialists, and a home theater installer. They've all noted that there are some challenges to build around with the ducts and the pipes, and they've all said the same thing we did, which is that if the room is going to be finished, they'll need to build a utility closet around the furnace, hot water heater, heat recovery ventilator, which are all on that one corner diagonally opposite the windows. But there's good news. The distance from the wall with the windows to the back drain pipes is actually 12 feet. It doesn't look like that in the pictures, but that's the way pictures are.
But that is what it is, so that is good to know, because we were eyeballing it, and we didn't know. We thought that was maybe 8 feet or so.
Yeah. But even though it might not look like it in the photos, he says, okay, so the full measurements are 16 feet 10 inches from the wall with the windows to the water heater, 16 feet 6 inches from the side wall to the side wall, 7 feet 7 inches from the unfinished floor to the lowest ductwork, other than the heat recovery ventilator, of course, but that will be in the utility closet anyway. So
that's right.
Difference. So all 6 contractors have said that an enclosed 12 by 15 foot room is entirely doable. So that's the room we're working with here.
That's right.
Ceiling heights could be a continuous 7 foot, or they can make the most of the higher ceiling with soffits around any ductwork or piping as necessary. All right, so 7 feet is if he enclosed the whole thing into a rectangle.
Yeah, you just make one flat ceiling. Yeah.
Or he could have like ductwork, and then it would be taller, but he doesn't.
Yeah, most of the ceiling would be taller, but you'd have some soffits coming down to which makes sense. That's normal. Yeah.
All right, so he's been told that he could construct a wall on either side of the black drain pipes. If he puts the wall closer to the windows, thus leaving the black drain pipes outside of the theater, then 12 feet is as wide as this theater could be. Okay. But the theater could be 13 feet wide if the drain pipes are inside the theater with bulkhead columns built around them, with access panels in those columns to get to the cleanouts. What do we think would be best? Dude, you gotta maximize every foot you can in this place. I would probably, and then this is what I'm gonna say. Overall, my overall sense of this is, well, first of all, I wish he would just take a piece of graph paper and just draw this out for us so that we can see where exactly this stuff is.
Pretty understandable now. That we know what that distance from the window to the black drain pipe is.
It is, but I am of the opinion that, okay, so just overall, he could build, he could go as wide as he could if there is a little bit of a soffit around one of those pipes. I don't think that's a big deal. I think that you can maybe, depending on where it is in the home theater, you could make it so that you are hanging something from it, like a surround speaker or something along those lines, because the soffit is, I mean, you're just putting a couple screws and it's not going to be a problem.
See, it's, I mean, I completely get what you're saying with trying to maximize the space of the room. I'm thinking the flip side of it, which is, how do we get the best soundproofing? And the best soundproofing would be if the pipes are outside of the theater.
That's true.
Unquestionably, because you do need that access panel to get to the cleanout, because these are drain pipes that have cleanouts in them. So there's got to be an access panel. An access panel is a hole. And anytime you got a hole in a wall...
Yeah, but I mean, you could throw insulation in there or whatever.
You can. I mean, you could build an overbuilt access panel, an unusually, over-constructed access panel. But I'm like, you could just leave the pipes outside of the theater And then you're not worrying about any of that, and it's still 12 feet wide.
So 12 by 15 is what you're looking with.
Yeah.
And 12 by 15 is not terrible. But
no, it's not terrible at all. A nice 3-seater couch would fit within a 12-foot width very nicely with walkways on both sides. So if you don't need walkways on both sides, you could go for...
Four-seater couch.
You could go 4-seater couch, or you could go for like the the 3 theater seats, each with arms, or maybe you do the love seat plus 1 recliner to one side of it. So anything other than a 3-seater couch, you're probably not going to have walkways on both sides, but that's not entirely necessary.
Yeah, I think my couch is, we cram 5 people on that. Yeah. That's like 10, 12 feet wide. No, it's got to be. I forgot. I'll have to measure it, but I think it's only about 10 or 15.
So so we're a little bit. We both understand each other's positions. If the soundproofing is a big deal to you, I would err on the side of having the pipes outside of the theater.
Was it a big deal to him? I feel like I remember it was.
He wants soundproofing.
Okay, I forgot about that. All right, so but again, I'm going to tell you right now, you're not getting 12 feet. Not if you start doubling up, in hat channels and everything.
But what if he puts the soundproofing on the outside portion of the theater wall?
I guess you could do that. I mean, he's going to build that room. He's going to build a room outside of a room.
Well, no. I mean, you put up your framing, but then instead of putting your clips and hat channels and double drywall on the inside of the theater, you put the clips and hat channels and double drywall on the outside of the theater.
But that only works on those inside walls. The outside walls are going to be,
but it's still giving you the decoupling, and it's still giving you the mass and the damping.
Yeah, but it's not going to help the walls that are physically the outside of the building that lead to the outside of the building.
This is actually we're going to get to that. So when it comes to soundproofing stuff, I'll get more into that, the construction side. Yeah.
All right, I will agree with Rob on this one and say that you should leave them out. Similarly, the front and back walls of the theater could be built in front of the drain pipes so that you could have a greater room width, but no columns to house the drain pipes. Just a shorter room from front to back overall. Again, with access panels now in the front and back walls to get the cleanouts, the room could still be 15 feet long. What do we recommend? Again, I mean, if you're going to try, you should try to keep everything outside of the room if you're really worried about soundproofing.
Yeah. Any holes in any walls is the enemy of soundproofing. So.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. So should he make the ceiling continuous at 7 feet tall, or should he go for as much ceiling height as possible with soffits around the ductwork? For this, I think that you do both. That makes sense.
I don't know how that makes sense.
Okay, so you make the soffits around the ductwork.
Okay.
Right? And then you take and the ceiling goes up as far as you can make it go up with whatever stuff you're going to have for your soundproofing. And then you drop a ceiling so that it makes it straight all the way across.
Oh.
Not necessarily a drop ceiling, but maybe even like just a very light patch, framing with just fabric draped across it, so that with enough stuff inside there so that you can hang speakers and all that other stuff. Like even for me, I feel like then you've got all this room up above you, because you're not going to have a lot of room in the room to put room treatment to like make that whole ceiling like a bass strap, so that you're just not having to do. Not having to do so much soundproofing on the walls and in the corners where you're not listening to us talk to you about, corner trapping and that sort of thing. Instead, what you'll have is a couple of panels, some on the back of the wall behind your head, some at the first reflection points.
So
one
using
behind
that
the speakers.
ceiling to be a big, bold bass trap, and you are going to want some serious bass trapping in a room this small.
Yeah.
I mean, my instinct was that the actual construction, the drywall and the framing of the ceiling, I am in agreement. I want that as high as you can get it for the most part. And then, so looking at his images there, it really only looks like he's got one major ductwork on one side of the room that will have to be built around, because the one big pipe that's running across the whole room, that's at the same distance as the black drain pipes. So that's going to be outside of the theater. So you're not having to build around the circular horizontal running duct pipe that's outside of your theater. If you go with,
it's really hard to tell from these pictures.
A little bit, yeah, but it really
kind of
looks
like it's going right through the middle of the theater, but maybe it's more towards the back.
Yeah, but it really looks like there's the soffits and what appears to be white water pipes all over on one side of the room. So to me, that's a soffit around that. And it's a fairly large soffit because those heater ducts come fairly far out in the room. But other than having the soffit around that, I would have the rest of the ceiling up higher where the ceiling joists are. Again, I would be hanging this ceiling in terms of sound clips, hat channels, double drywall, green glue. That's your soundproofing. And the soffit can be made with that exact same construction.
Right.
But I think that makes a lot of sense. And then, yeah, what Tom is saying, if visually you want to hide it all or you want to use that extra ceiling height, now you have a big old bass trap up there, I'm super in favor of that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to do what I said, which is make it one continuous ceiling. You could just take and, mirror the soffit on the other side by just putting something up there that's essentially a big, bass trap to make it look more visually balanced.
Yeah,
I guess if you wanted to.
I mean, one of my thoughts was that it seems like I might just be inferring this, but it felt to me like he was thinking. So if you're seeing where the windows are over to one side of the room.
Yeah,
and it
I
seemed like
all that stuff was that would be the front of the room, and he would cover all.
That's
that
what he was thinking. That would be the front of the room is closer to the windows. But I'm thinking, since he wants a projection set up, you could have the soffit that's covering that heating duct and the white water pipes that are there, and then just have your screen right below that. Because instead of standing up and potentially hitting your head on a soffit overhead, just have your projection screen under the soffit, and then you sit closer to the windows.
So the soffit's on the left, on what I consider to be the left side of the room. So if you're facing the windows, which
from
go
the
to the
entrance
outside,
to the room, that's the easiest
you're
way,
walking the room. You're facing the windows. On your left is all this
ductwork stuff and everything. Yeah.
On the right, there's the one little pipe he was asking about whether or not we should keep it in the room or whatever that thing is. So, and that's the one we said leave out, and these guys as well. But if there's going to be a soffit here, I mean, I kind of like the idea of just it's a 7-inch. From what I can tell, it's a 7-inch drop ceiling.
Right.
I mean, maybe it's a 5-inch drop ceiling after all the hat channels and all that other stuff.
Yeah, and then you've got your Atmos speakers up there. You've got maybe can lighting, because if the can lighting is installed in a suspended ceiling that is suspended below an actual double drywall ceiling, we're not worried at all about the soundproofing or anything like that from having the can lights. So you could have can lights. You could have your Atmos speakers installed in the drop ceiling. You got your solid soffit up at the front of the room. Your screen right below that. I'm liking that.
Yeah. D. Okay. I scrolled back up to look at the pictures. Now that we've made our recommendations for the room's dimensions, what should he request in terms of soundproofing instruction? Rob already said that. Or put it another way, what should he be hoping to hear when contractors are telling him how they would tackle the soundproofing issue? So, we're going to throw a lot of stuff at you, and they're going to throw their experience.
Sure.
So, there is what I would consider to be best practices, and there's going to be things that these guys are going to come at you and say, I have experience with this, and this will be good. This will do what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Now, who do you believe? And I think you're going to end up having to go a little bit with your gut on it. Or
just talk to the guys at Soundproofing Company and go with what they say.
Yes, you can. But like I said, those guys, and I'm in 100% agreement, they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
That's not an issue or a question here, or a concern of mine. What is that, when we deal with these, we're looking at a couple of pictures of a room. These guys are standing in the room, and that in a area that they're very familiar with construction that they're very familiar with, and they know a lot about how these houses have been built, or whatever, wherever you live. So they may have knowledge that says, listen, yes, what they're telling you to do, 100%, but you can get 95% of the way there and not have to spend this extra 1/3 of your budget, and you need to be able to listen to that. So it's just going to be a balancing act. You're going to get the information that you need from Soundproofing Company, and then you're going to have to talk to these guys. And you may just end up going with the person that you trust most with your gut, but I would definitely go with somebody who sounds like, or who at least seems to be open to, hey, if that's the way you want to do it, that's the way we'll do it.
Right. So, I mean, I'll let you know what I would do, basically, and see how close we get. But I'll start with the floor. Right? I want that dimpled plastic underlay. This is a basement, so I want the dimpled plastic underlay. That way, if there is any moisture from the concrete foundation, it has somewhere to breathe and go without getting into your plywood subfloor. So plywood subfloor directly over that dimpled plastic underlay. If you want to make, there's not really any reason for you to soundproof the floor because you don't have people below you. You're not worried about really the sound transmission that way. So I wouldn't really worry about double plywood with green glue in between on the floor. But dimple plastic, plywood subfloor. Then you're going to construct your framing walls on top of that subfloor. That is essentially creating your room within a room construction. And one really important thing to know, and Soundproofing Company guys will reiterate this when you talk to them, is you only need to decouple once. So you've got walls that are for sure exterior walls, right? The wall with the window, the wall with the black or the gray draping over it says a concrete exterior wall. Those walls, you're going to put your framing up, and then you're just going to put drywall right onto that framing. You do not need the sound clips and hat channels on the exterior walls because the framing is already decoupled from the exterior wall. You don't need to decouple twice.
As long as you don't screw it into the external wall.
Yeah. So your framing, like I said, your framing is going to go onto the subfloor that you installed on top of your dimpled plastic. It's not touching the exterior walls at all. You're going to insulate against those exterior walls. If you're using spray foam, great. If you're using regular insulation, you're going to want a vapor barrier, especially in Canada. You're going to vapor barrier. Then you're going to put your drywall right onto that framing. And depending on, I mean, if this is a true exterior wall, you're done. If this is a party exterior wall, because it is a townhouse, maybe you do double drywall and green glue. But that's a maybe. So if the guy's like, you know what, you really don't need it, I would go with that. Because we want to save space and we want to save cost. For the wall that you're constructing to separate this room from the rest of your house, that wall needs to be decoupled somehow. Now, ideally, you decouple and damp on the sound producing side. So yes, ideally, you would put the clips and the hat channels and the double drywall with the green glue all on the theater side. Ideally, you would. But you can put it on the other side. It's not quite as effective, but it is still effective. So if that saves you, if that gets you just the width that you need to do it that way instead, and it lets you keep the drain pipes outside so you don't have any holes in your walls, I would do that. Ceiling, clips and hat channels, double drywall, green glue. And that's what I would look for.
All right, so he was thinking he preferred to be able to sit 12 feet away from his screen. I caught the impression that the windows to the back of the room is 15 feet, right?
Well, from the windows to the hot water heater, which is some ways past the drain pipe, that is 16 feet and 10 inches, he said.
All right, so, okay.
So from the windows to the black drain pipes, that's 12
But you're
feet.
saying sit the other direction, which would make the room 12 feet wide. 12 feet
Well, I'm saying that the windows will be your right wall, your right side wall.
Which makes his room now 12,
12 feet in width.
In width, right.
And then it's from the wall that is beside the wall with the windows, the one that has the gray on it, from that to the opposite wall is 16 feet 6 inches without any construction. So I'm saying you put up a couple of 2x4 framed walls with a 2-inch gap between the exterior wall and the framing, and then just a layer of 1/2-inch drywall because it's exterior walls. Right. And you're done. So you got a little more than 15 feet from front to back of your theater.
So the 15 feet's going left, right. Okay, I can't get this room.
Yeah, looking at it now, the 15 feet is left to right.
Okay, looking at it now.
Looking at it now from the entrance, from the viewpoint that we have.
I thought he was talking about putting the screen on the windowed wall.
No. The screen is going to go either on the wall that's got the gray draping or on the wall that right now is just pink insulation.
Okay.
That's where the screen is going to go. One of those two. Confused. And I'm saying maybe put it on the wall that's got the pink insulation because then it's underneath the soffit that you build to hold the ducts.
Right. So prefer to be able to sit 12 feet away from a screen and then have a beanbag chair or something in front. You need some extra temporary seating rather than sitting 10 feet away like we suggested. And then having bar stools at the back as temporary seating. 2 feet for bar stools? Nah.
No, because we were saying if he's 10 feet away from the screen, he's got 5 feet left behind him.
Right.
You could put some bar stools behind him in that 5-foot space. He's like, maybe I sit 12 feet away. I only have 3 feet behind me, not enough to put another row of seats, but I could put beanbags in front of me.
Right. Yeah. So he just likes the longer seating distance to make it feel a bit more theater-like. What are our thoughts on that idea? My thought is that you build this room and then you sit in it and decide how,
I know, but he wants to pre-wire this, right? So he's trying to decide what seating distance they're going to be.
It's not going to be that much difference for pre-wire.
Yeah, but I mean, if you put the outlet and then you want to move it 2 feet, it does look a little bit janky, right? I mean, my real answer is I want you to get a 110-inch screen for all kinds of reasons. Because the 110-inch screen, I worked it out, right? If you have 2 feet from your floor to the actual bottom of the screen itself, and therefore you can have a nice regular center speaker that's about 8 inches tall. You got a 3-inch border around your screen, and you use a 12 to 14-inch tall center speaker stand. All of that works out while putting the screen at optimal screen height, while leaving you a nice 2 feet on either side of the screen for your front, left, and right speakers. I'm like, all of the sizes work out really nicely with a 110-inch diagonal screen. Now, you decide with a 110-inch screen how far away you want to sit to get the viewing angles that you want. But he was suggesting he wants to sit 12 feet from a 120-inch screen. If you sit 11 feet from a 110-inch screen, you have the exact same viewing angles. So how about 11 feet? Because 11 feet also leaves you 4 feet behind your seats, which is a really nice distance if you want surround back speakers, whereas only 3 feet behind you, I'm like, I don't want surround back speakers if I've only got 3 feet behind me. Now, 11 feet is like, well, do you put beanbags in front of you or bar stools behind you? I don't know, maybe both. You could do both if you went 11 feet. I'm saying 11 feet from a 110-inch screen.
Okay, I'm going to go with that since I don't want to talk about this anymore. Ted. Since Ted got his dual Parasound audio subwoofers for his theater, he took his DefTech SuperCube 3 subwoofer and used it in his living room with his Onkyo AVR-790 receiver in a 2.1 setup. The SuperCube 3 died on him 4 times. DefTech replaced the connection plate on the back twice, and then they replaced the entire amplifier. It died every time, so it was replaced entirely with the SuperCube 4000. Ted says that the DefTech customer service really went above and beyond, so he appreciates that.
That's nice to hear.
Now, before he plugs in his SuperCube 4000. What?
Okay. He got a replacement.
I got it.
He's like, I'm scared.
Is there any chance it's the output from his Onkyo AVR, his receiver, that is causing the problem? There's the power cord and the subwoofer cable, and there's the only 2 wires going into the subwoofer. So if this new subwoofer also dies, what's the culprit? Karma? Jealousy over the SVSs?
Do you have a power
or the Parasound? Yeah, I mean, that's about the only thing. But you see, I don't believe that would be the case, because they would not replace it this many times with a power conditioner, because they would see the damage, and the damage would be, and they would know what it was. No. There'd be blown fuses in there for sure. I mean, they got to be protected with fuses. I don't believe that it could be a power conditioner. I mean, but if you do have a power conditioner, for real,
stop using that.
Yes, don't do that.
Stop using the power conditioner if that's what you have. Yeah. Okay, so could it be the subwoofer output? I've never heard of it being that.
I mean, not without blowing the AV receiver at least one of these times.
Right, like if lightning hit it and it got through the outlet into your AV receiver and then it transmitted the lightning strike through. Yes, but he didn't get hit by lightning 4 times.
Yeah.
So I don't see how. I've never heard of it being that.
The only thing that I would be concerned about is the outlet that you're plugging it into. That's the only source of possible problems that I could see.
Well, plus he used this subwoofer for years in the room that used to be his theater, and he didn't have this problem with that AV receiver.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
I would probably invest in one of the APC power strip, surge protector thingies. I mean, just as a precaution.
The P8V is the one we like.
Yeah, just in case.
I guess.
Just in case, but I don't think that's the problem. I think this one was just, there was something in there or something.
I'm also kind of wondering if there was just something faulty inside of that subwoofer.
That's what I'm saying. Point. Yeah, I think that there may have been like a short in there someplace. Mechanically, that was causing some feedback that was blowing out everything.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I really don't think it's the subwoofer wire from your.
It's definitely not the subwoofer wire. Yeah. So if we were to upgrade the receiver, the thing is too, is if it were, if it were coming in, and then it usually would go someplace else as well. You know what I mean? It goes through the system, and the fact that it's kind of blowing itself up and self-destructing, to me, either says it's something internal to this thing, or it's coming from the power cord.
Yeah.
And then it's getting stopped by the electronics that are inside. So if he were to upgrade his receiver in his living room, what would you recommend? He'd like to have Spotify Connect, the best room correction he can afford, a phono input, though that he could add an external phono preamp, and a price tag under $500. It'd strictly be for a 2.1 setup and no extra zones. You're going to end up getting extra zones, and no one cares.
He's just saying he doesn't need it.
Yeah, I'm saying that you're going to have them anyway. So, so Spotify Connect, I got to be honest with you, I can't remember the last time I've paid attention to Spotify. I didn't. If somebody had told me that that Spotify didn't exist anymore, I'd be like, "Really? Yeah. Oh, that's too bad." That would have been the end of that thought for me. So I mean, you're going to end up with the AV receiver that's going to be full fledged. If you want like Audyssey, multi-Q, and all that stuff in it, then you're going to end up with what the 3300 or 3400 these days is the least expensive one.
Yeah. So I mean, Accessories for Less did have the X3300W listed on their website for a little bit. It's now saying sold out as we're recording this. That might change. We don't know, but the price got down to $450, which interestingly, so the 3300, the 3400 from Denon, they do not have phono inputs, but there's no reason to overspend on a phono input. There's actually one. The same company that makes the microphone preamp that I use, they make a nice little phono preamp for $50. So, so that's
Emotiva had one for a hot minute.
That's $200 though.
Oh, right.
You don't need that. So the company is called ART, A-R-T. That's the company name, and is the DJ Pre. So that is
you know what I want him to do? I want him to buy a very inexpensive. What is he? He's just looking for 2.1, right?
Yeah.
I want him to buy a very inexpensive, like integrated amp.
Okay.
Or not integrated amp, a little preamp, a little,
little stereo preamp,
little stereo preamp, a little stereo amplifier. I want him to get DRAC, like a little
from the Mini DSP,
the Mini DSP. And I want, then the Spotify Connect can come from wherever the heck he wants it to come from.
Yeah, you could plug in a Chromecast.
Yeah, and you're done with that. I want him to do that so that he can play around with that, because I think he'd enjoy that a lot more than just buying another receiver.
Yeah, so, I mean, the question is, how much is that Mini DSP with Dirac going to cost? Because that's going to be probably more Dirac. I'm trying to look up the one. How come they don't list their price for this one anymore?
This must be free.
Definitely not free, but yeah, so that's probably going to go over your price point if you go with $400 there is the price for the 2-channel or the 2-in 4-out Mini DSP with Dirac. So yeah, we're going to go over your budget if you go that way, but I think could be worth it.
I think that might be worth it for him, because he likes to tinker, and you know what? I need him to stop tinkering with the other system for a hot minute, so we could talk about this. But I think that he would really enjoy that. This could actually be.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think this could be a brand new Mini DSP with the DRAC stuff, and then everything else is used vintage stuff that he could really play around. Not too vintage, something that still works. You know what I mean? I think that could be done. I think that could be done.
Because you can certainly get a $100 2-channel amp.
Yeah.
So there's your $500, the Mini DSP and the 2-channel amp. So then all you're looking for is a stereo preamp.
Yeah.
And probably a Chromecast. So
a Chromecast like $35, man. Come on.
I know.
It doesn't even count.
$150 over your budget if you go that way. So I could argue for the Denon receiver, the 3300 or the 3400 with the ART DJ Pre to give you your phone a pre-out. I could also argue for Accessories for Less has some of the 1-year-old Onkyo RZ series.
Right.
Which have really good amplifiers in them. Really nice power supplies, really good amplifiers. And they do have a phono input. It's just, then you're stuck with AccuEQ.
Right.
But they're like $300. So you can get some of the 1 or 2-year-old RZ series from Onkyo for like $300. And it has all the inputs and amplification already there. And it's just
They probably have Spotify Connect, I would think.
Oh, they do. Yeah. Well, and Denon Marantz, that's the only way they do Spotify now is Spotify Connect.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, there's some options, Ted.
All right. Have fun. On a side note, Ted said he's enjoyed listening to some vinyl again, not because of the sound quality or even because of his nostalgia. It's because nostalgia. Anyways, but because it got him to just sit and listen to entire albums again. With Spotify, he's got his screen in front of him, providing distractions. It's super easy to skip around from album to album, song to song. But with vinyl, there's no distractions, and it's so inconvenient to change albums or songs. He just listens the whole way through. I can't be bothered. Yep. It's way over there. So that's why he wants to have a phono input. You know what? I can appreciate what he's saying.
Oh, yeah,
I can actually appreciate. But you can again, listen to physical CDs, and you get the same sort of experience, except you can skip around a little bit. You can skip easier. But I mean, I remember liking songs and maybe liking certain parts of songs and wanting to rewind just that little bit of that song because I missed my favorite bit. Mm-hmm. There's always that favorite bit of a song that you like, and with a cassette tape I could just yep. and then it would go. And I always hated that about CDs. I always felt that CDs made me listen to the whole song again.
Now you can rewind CDs.
I know, but it was such a pain in the ass. And not only that, when you sometimes you held the thing down, you just wanted to go a little bit, and then it would skip to the beginning of the track no matter what. And then you're gonna fast forward now? What am I?
Tough life.
I know. Anyways, so I appreciate that too, though. I understand what you're saying. This is a different Charleston? Or we had a Carl.
We didn't have a Charleston before.
Did we have a Carlton?
Not this week, anyway.
We had a Carlton. I'm gonna scroll up.
This is Charleston. I don't recall anybody with a similar name to that.
No, there was somebody. Hold on, because I remember there was Tom, and then Michael and Shawn.
Nope.
And Kris. And
it must have been from the comments.
Patrick. Ooh, comments. Here we go.
There was Carlton. Carlton in the comments.
That's what I'm saying. Carlton. There we go. See, I'm right. You're
Mystery
wrong.
solved.
Mystery solved. Tom's just platter and tatter. I can't talk anymore, apparently. All right. So first, just a comment from Charleston. He bought some Focal Little Birds from Accessories for Less. When the tweeters stopped working, I wouldn't even know. If the tweeter stopped working on mine. I would have no clue. That whole speaker could not work, and I would be clueless for months, if not years. Anyways, okay. So he reached out to Accessories for Less, and they got... he tried to get service from Focal for about a month, but with no luck, which is not surprising considering they don't make those speakers anymore. So he reached out to Accessories for Less, and they got Focal to respond in 2 days. So a big shout out to Accessories for Less for their service, but not so much for Focal. Yeah, I can kind of... I mean, I'm not saying that Focal's right, but...
No, we want better service than that. Absolutely.
Yeah. So Charleston is getting a JVC projector, and he mostly uses his Apple TV 4K as a source device. How will that work in terms of Dolby Vision and HDR? HDR movies on iTunes are in Dolby Vision, but JVC projectors only do HDR10 and HLG. So does the projector accept a Dolby Vision signal and convert it to HDR10? And how different is Dolby Vision from HDR10 anyways? Well, Dolby Vision is... basically metadata on top of HDR10, is it not?
On the discs, it is a superset of HDR10. Okay. On the discs, you are mandated to have HDR10, and then the Dolby Vision data exists as a superset on top of that. In streaming, it isn't. In streaming, it can just be Dolby Vision, and that's all there is.
In that case, I have no idea what's going to happen there. But for discs, it's just going to take the HDR10, which is the thing that it can do, and just do it. And so it's just going to ignore the Dolby Vision.
Yeah. So the Apple TV 4K is the thing that's going to do the conversion. It's not going to send the Dolby Vision through the Apple TV 4K into your JVC because the JVC cannot accept the Dolby Vision signal. But the Apple TV 4K can be set to output HDR10. And it will do the conversion, and it'll do the conversion just fine. So then your JVC, as far as it's concerned, is just getting an HDR10 signal. And in fact, the Apple TV 4K, when you connect it to your JVC, will auto-detect that it can accept HDR10, and that's what it'll set itself to. So that's where the conversion is happening. How different is the Dolby Vision going to be from the HDR10? Gosh. I mean, there are some different... I'm not going to say there's no differences whatsoever. There are some small differences. But I mean, they're both HDR. It's not like they're worlds apart. So, I mean, if you have a Dolby Vision display, it is, of course, tone mapping essentially like frame by frame, if that's what the metadata says to do. Whereas HDR10, it's tone mapping itself once, and then everything just uses that same curve to tone map everything. So, Dolby Vision tends to retain all detail a little bit better.
Yeah, and you can think about it this way too. If you tone map an entire movie, and the entire movie is shot all with the same sort of aesthetic to it, well, then that's going to be pretty successful.
Yes.
But you get something like, God help you, Batman. Batman v Superman.
Yeah.
Dawn.
That has huge swings.
And that's where you might run into some issues.
And I mean, you're doing significant tone mapping because you're talking about to a projector where your maximum light output is probably going to be about 100 nits, and what would be 100 nits on a flat panel is now going to be 50 nits. So there's significant tone mapping that is going on. But ultimately, you have no choice in the matter. You got to use HDR10 if you want HDR at all. And it's not such a large difference that I'm really terribly concerned about it. And the Apple TV 4K is going to do that conversion for you automatically anyway. Right. So it's kind of moot. It's definitely not something to worry about. And it will work. It'll function just fine.
Yeah. All right, we're going to do two more and we're going to be done because I wouldn't really want to answer Bob's question because, I have a problem with that. All right, Bobby. Bobby still has not purchased his AV receiver or his dual subwoofers yet. The budget is tight, but we've convinced him that spending a bit more to get dual SVS PB-1000 subs is going to be worth it, so he's been waiting and saving up with the intention of getting a 9.2 Denon receiver and the dual subs. But then we mentioned the Onkyo TX-NR787 receiver being only $550 from Accessories for Less. Bobby's room is small, roughly 12 by 12, and his speakers are clips, so he had no intention of adding external amplification anyway. Dude, you could have stopped at 12 by 12 because unless the fact that you have clips is just ridiculous. Well, it's like
on not top only of that, it's clip speakers. So we are in agreement. You do not need external amps.
This is like you saying, "Oh, I don't need a sight on my gun to hunt this mouse. He's right there. Plus, I'm using a bazooka. So you're like, okay, yeah, you're gonna get him, Haas. You're gonna get him. All right." So he had no intention of adding. Okay, or we recommend foregoing surround back speakers given his room size, and if he only spends $550 on the receiver, he could afford to get the dual PB-1000s, like right now, or just in general.
Like right now.
So should he go for it, or is Audyssey Multi-Q XT32 such a big deal that he should continue to wait and save up? Okay, I want to say this with as much delicacy as I possibly can. Your room's going to be difficult. It's not going to be easy. It's a 12 by 12 by probably 8 or 7. And these are the dimensions that we do not really look for. Now, how much is Audyssey going to be able to help? Well, it depends on how much you do in the first place, how much treatment and stuff you put inside here. This is not going to be I'm buying my speakers, I'm buying my receiver, I'm done. You're in this for the long haul, sir. You're going to be doing a lot of stuff. How much is Audyssey going to be able to help you? At the very beginning, I don't know that you would notice a huge difference between the Onkyo and the Audyssey. If you just slapped into this room with nothing other than a sofa, some carpet, and this gear, I think the two might sound more similar than dissimilar.
Okay.
But the minute you start doing the rest of the stuff that you're going to do to this room, hopefully, which is adding some room treatments, getting some bass trapping, making sure that you've got plush carpet, making sure that you've got some diffusion, making sure you've got something behind your head to the increased dialogue intelligibility. That's where I think Audyssey is going to make a big difference. That's just me. I can't predict for sure what you'll do, what you won't do, or how much you will even notice it. But ask yourself this. Later on, after everything's set up, and you're sitting there in that home theater, are you going to think to yourself, I wonder how it would sound with Audyssey? Because if that's what you're going to say to yourself, because that's what I would say to myself, you should wait. If you're like, I'm never going to care. First of all, you're a liar. And second of all, fine. Knock yourself out by the Onkyo. Instant gratification.
To me, step number one, you have to have dual subs. This is non-negotiable. So if the only way you're going to have two subs is if you spend less and get the 787, then that's that. Because if the only alternative is, well, I can get the Denon, but then I only have one sub, no, you have to have 2 subs.
Well, you have to have 2 subs right now, or is it like that's it? The money after this, I'm never making money again.
Right.
You know, I mean, you can have one. In fact, I'd be honest with you, I'd rather you have 1 sub for a couple of months.
Oh, so you can notice the improvement?
Oh yeah. So when you get that second sub, you're like, oh my god, that Tom and Rob are amazing. Mostly Rob, but they're amazing.
And SVS will give you the discount when you come to them to buy the second sub. So you're not going to lose the dual sub discount by getting them one at a time. All right. I mean, honestly, the ideal is to stick to your original plan. Now, it doesn't have to be a Denon. It could be a Marantz. You can get I think Accessories for Less has an SR6011 for like $750 right now, although by the time you hear this, it might be gone.
Yeah. At 2.
Yeah, golly. This is really tough. Because, I mean, it's not like I don't like the 787. You got to have the dual subs. Start with that.
Nah. I say you get the receiver, get 1 sub.
Get a Denon.
And live with it.
Get a Denon and a Marantz and 1 sub, and then get the second sub later. Yep. Just so you can grin at the improvement.
Well, I think that it would be worth it. I mean, I think it's worth it on more than one level too. It's worth it in the. I think he's going to notice a huge difference.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's going to be very positive, and he's going to really value that money that he spent.
That's true.
And not only that, I think that if he does, for whatever reason, end up putting that second sub in and going, I don't really notice anything, he can now send it back.
That's true.
Very easily.
Well, he could buy the 2
money.
And send 1 back as well,
but he won't though. He won't.
Okay.
He'll set 2 up, and that would be the end of it.
You know what? We're both agreeing here, which is we kind of want you to get either the Denon or Marantz, and we want you to ultimately end up with 2 subs at some point. So there you go. There's our answer, because we've talked ourselves
I
into
lived
it.
with 1 sub for many years.
So did I. Yeah.
So you can too, sir. All right, last question. Bob from the Philippines. He asks, why do we recommend Atmos? Bob went with AVRant recommendations on a lot of things in his theater. He thinks his LG OLED was worth every penny. Blue G's cable has been outstanding, and he's very happy with his Denon receiver powering his 5 SVS Ultra Series speakers and his SP-2000 sub. So since we've talked so much about Atmos, that got him excited, and he fell into the hype. He had an extra pair of small Polk speakers to try out his top speakers of some kind. He spent several days and drilled multiple holes in the ceiling. Sorry, dude. And tried top fronts, top middles, and top rears, but he has a low ceiling and access to only a small amount of Atmos content. Under those circumstances, nothing delivered a wow factor, and he certainly didn't think the effort was worth it. Very little bang for the buck. So with his experience, if someone were asking if they should spend money to expand to Atmos, he'd have to answer no. So why do we continue to encourage Atmos installations? We both have Atmos setups, right? Has our experience been drastically different? Dude, I so much take offense to this whole question.
Well, okay, so this is a lot of this is my wording, so don't get too mad at Bob.
I'm not mad at Bob. I'm not mad at Bob. I'm not mad. I'm not. In fact, I don't even blame Bob for this question, no matter how
you can blame me for the
it.
wording.
But the reality is that I do not ever recommend Atmos setups. What I do is answer questions about Atmos setups, okay? You ask me, where should I put my Atmos speakers? I tell you where to put them. That does not mean I'm advocating for Atmos. I have said multiple times on this podcast. In fact, moments ago, I just said if my Atmos speakers blew out, I would not know. Now, Bob, you and I are in agreement.
It is absolutely
Atmos
fair to say that we have talked about Atmos a lot on this podcast, though.
That is true, but that's not my fault. No one could listen
to this podcast and not claim that Atmos has come up.
I've talked a lot about HDR and OLEDs and a bunch of other stuff I don't have or have a ton of experience with, and I have no interest in buying anytime soon. So what does that got to do with anything? I mean, yes, we answer a lot of questions about Atmos because this is a home theater podcast that is for, hardcore enthusiasts. I mean, it's not really just for you. It's for anybody who's interested in AV or home theater, no matter what level of interest you have in it. It's like, I'm looking forward to the day was like, I got a red wire and a black wire. I have no idea what to do with them. Like, you're my people.
Absolutely. I would not mind basic questions whatsoever. Please bring them on.
The fact that people are having us design their home theaters does not mean that that's what exactly we would do for ourselves. Now, people have asked us, if you had a bajillion dollars, what would you get? Well, I get all the speakers.
Yeah, you'd get a Trinov, wouldn't you? If you had unlimited money, sure, you get a Trinov. Yeah, if I had unlimited money,
the JVC synthesis, I'd have speakers coming out of everything.
Get the JBL synthesis version of the Trinov, which is even more expensive.
There you go. I mean, it would just... So, but that being said, I have said multiple times in this podcast, Atmos is like... Occasionally I go, oh yeah, there's a speaker up there. That's pretty much how I feel about Atmos. And Clint was amazed, because I talked with Clint DeBoer over, well, I guess he's at Pro Tool Reviews now, but I was talking to him the other day, and we were talking about Atmos. Because he doesn't have Atmos installed in his home theater. And he was asking me about it. I'm like, oh yeah, I installed the speakers. And I told this story on the podcast earlier, and he said to me, so what do you think? I went, He goes, all right. So no, then I'm like, I don't think I'd really invest if it were me. I did it simply because we were talking about it so much.
Right.
I really felt
and you wanted to have the first hand so that you could.
Well, I wanted to be able to, and I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for that title.
Well, like you said, the first one that's impressed you was Jurassic Park in DTSX, right?
Yeah, and that really was, but that was like crazy, like over the top mixing, and nobody else has done anything like it. Infinity War, I never noticed it. I'm sure there's stuff that goes on like in the explosions and stuff, but when that stuff's going on,
if you played the movie and had disconnected all your floor level speakers, you will hear stuff coming out of the overheads. But it's so
much more
cacophonous mix. So I mean, I'm a little bit more positive on Atmos than Tom, but I'm also crazy. Like, I had 11 speakers when DTS Neo X was the only way to use 11 speakers, or I guess Audyssey DSX also existed. I'm the guy who advocates for front wides when like nobody else does, but I like them. So, but I have also said, if you're the person who installed surround back speakers and went, I love them, then I think you'll be the person who will install Atmos speakers and go, I like them too. Whereas if you're the person who installed surround back speakers and went, then that's probably the way you're going to feel about Atmos speakers.
That was me. Yeah. My first home theater, I disconnected my surround back speakers because I felt like they were messing everything up.
Because to me, it's that kind of enhancement over the standard 5.1. It's the addition of surround backs to 5.1. It's that sort of level.
Yeah, I'm very sorry that Bob put a bunch of holes in the ceiling trying to figure this thing out. But holes are a lot easier to cover than I guess.
Yeah, and these weren't like in ceilings, so I think he's talking about a speaker wire or like the mounting holes.
The mounting holes is what I got the impression from.
Yeah, so you can patch that at least, and obviously he was willing to do it, to try it, but clearly with the hopes that he'd be really impressed by it, and that makes sense. Now, I mean, a little bit is like these were these really small little Polk speakers, and we've commented many times that what you use for Atmos, you can use almost anything, but I'm like, maybe these were so bad that they weren't really giving Atmos.
I think it's more of a content issue. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, the limited content for sure.
I think that's what it. I don't think there's a whole lot of Atmos content out there that makes
really
you go,
stands
wow.
out. But also, if you were expecting to be blown away by how much it stands out, it's not. They don't even want that to be the case. Yeah. Like, they called it Atmos because it's atmospheric. It's not like they didn't call it. Well, I don't know what would be a good name. Like, gunshot, like that's not what they called it, right? They called it Atmos. It's supposed to be atmospheric, enveloping. And
this is coming from somebody who never thought that it needed my home. I never went to my home theater and went, boy, this sounds all great down here, but I just wish there was more sound up above my head. I just wish there was more up there. I've never thought that thought this entire time I've done this podcast and everything else. So, Bob, I'm with you. All right. Okay. I don't think it makes a huge amount of difference. I do think it occasionally does make some difference. Yep. I think that's kind of what they were going for. And when people ask me what they should do to their home theaters to make it sound better, Atmos is not going to be a recommendation I make probably at all.
It's certainly not top of the list. This is the thing. We get a lot of people saying, I've got the display I always dreamed of. I bought all the speakers I always dreamed of. I installed 4 subwoofers. I put in the recliners. I treated my room. What else can I do to do something fun? And I'm like, you could add Atmos. Like, you've done everything else, right? So you got money burning a hole in your pocket. You want to do something in your theater. You could do Atmos. This is something you could do. Like,
well, yeah. I mean, a lot of times, we'll say things like, okay, so I want to improve my home theater. We're like, okay, add a second sub.
Yeah.
You know, we never say Atmos before we say second sub. We never say Atmos before we say treat the room. We never say Atmos before we say get better room correction. We never say Atmos before we talk about, you know, room treatments.
And it's like, if you're budgeting for your theater, we're like, by all means, if you've got the walls down, wire for Atmos because that's cheap. But if then the budget becomes tight, that is the last thing that you install.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's kind of like that for Bob, right? He's like, he got the great TV, he got the great speakers, he got the good sub. He's like, I want to try this next thing. Oh, I was disappointed by it. Well, you know, if you had gone for, he's got 5 SVS Ultra Series speakers. If you had installed surround backs, maybe you're the type of person who would go, meh.
Yeah.
Which, that makes sense. Totally makes sense.
I am definitely a meh person when it comes to these things.
So I'm sorry, Bob, but at the same time, I'm not gonna tell people, nope, don't do Atmos, because I've enjoyed it. Now, has it changed my life? If it went away, could I not survive without it? Absolutely not. Yeah. It's a fun little extra.
Yeah. And people are not coming to us saying, not very often at least, saying, should I get Atmos?
Right. They're saying, I'm getting Atmos. And then which acquisition?
Which speaker should I get with all this other stuff? So
what 2-channel amp can I use to drive them?
And this kind of goes back to that other question we had about, you know, the Parasound amp. Preamp, which is like you hear it talked about over and over again, and it gives you this idea that it is somehow true. And you hear us talking about Atmos over and over again, you think, well, they like Atmos. They are advocating for Atmos. And that is really not very true. In my case, it's certainly not true at all. In Rob's case, it's a very conditional truth. You know,
I do get it because we have talked about it a lot. So
absolutely,
completely makes sense that you get that impression. Yeah.
So let's just be very clear. If you were to ask me, should I get Atmos in my home theater, I would ask you a bunch of questions about other
all
stuff.
the things to do first. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you said, and if the answer to those questions were I've done all those things, I'd be like, well, yeah, sure, I guess whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just don't expect to. I would literally tell you, don't expect to be blown away. Don't be surprised if it takes you a while to notice that they're up there. And I think that's part a problem with the content.
Yep.
You know, once we get some better content out there, and maybe it's never going to happen. Maybe that's not what Atmos is ever going to be designed to do. But I really feel like I'm waiting for a really good horror movie to come out that uses Atmos, you know, that really nails it, that makes it, that's going to be that big thing. And even if it's just a scene here and there, like in superhero movies or whatever, like Doc Ock scene, when finally the surrounds
just make it stand out for the I want to stand out moment.
Right. That would be great if they could do something like that. You know, something where it moves through the house or through the space, and you can hear it really going across the ceiling and going front to back and left and right and that sort of thing. That would be fantastic. Someone make a movie around that sound effect, please, so that I can have it.
I like the helicopter demo. So yeah, I mean, the last thing I'll say about it is another one of the things where I would say sometimes you value it more by getting used to it and then having its absence. Because he installed it and was hoping to notice something where I'm like, it is the type of thing, in my opinion, where you install it, you get used to it, then you take it away and you go, oh, I kind of missed that. That's my reaction to it, and that's not what Bob did. So it could be that level of a thing too.
All right, that's going to be it. Who do we have left, Rob?
We have a question, or a couple of questions from Infinite Gary, and we've got a question from Nick. That was it for our list this week. Now, I did get several questions that came in today on the Monday, but I cut off the list on Sunday. So
okay,
there you go.
All right. Lastly, we want to let you know that if you want your home theater question or AV question answered, even if it's about Atmos, you can send it to question@avrant.com. We also want to thank our listeners of the week. We've got our James, who sent me the rock paper, which was awesome. I guess I just need scissors. I should have made that joke earlier. Sorry. And we also want to thank our 67 patrons over at patreon.com.
For sure, James. Thank you so much for sending that over to Tom. It was very nice of you. And thanks so much to our 67 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast. Also, if you would like to donate to the podcast just in a one-time thing, you can come to the website and there is a support the podcast button over on the right-hand side. That'll just take you to PayPal.
There we go. All right. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.